How's it going, Can Crushers? Welcome to another episode of the Crushing Cans Pre-Fight Pick'em Show. Tonight, we're talking about UFC Fight Night Vegas 11, Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington. We kick off the night with Tyson Nam versus Jerome Rivera at 125 pounds. Tyson Nam, he's an American with 19 wins, 11 losses, and 1 draw. He's 36 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, with a 68-inch reach. He's 1-2 in the UFC, coming off of a first-round knockout win over Zaruk Adeshev, and he also won a Performance of the Night bonus in that fight. He lost to Sergio Pettis in his debut by decision, and then he also lost to Kai Kara France in his second fight in the UFC by decision as well. Tyson Nam also knocked out Eduardo Dantes in Shooto prior to making it to the UFC. At the time, Dantes was the Bellator 135-pound champion, and while Nam wasn't necessarily signed to Bellator, they had an option to match any contract for 18 months, and Nam almost got the opportunity to go to the UFC right after that, but Bellator prevented it, and Nam's managers believed that Bellator was trying to shelf him. Nam is also the former X1 flyweight champion and the former Destiny MMA flyweight champion as well. He has 11 knockout wins on his record, 7 decision wins, and 1 submission win. In his losses, he's lost 8 times by decision, and he's only been knocked out once. He has never been submitted in 31 fights. Now, Nam takes on the renegade Jerome Rivera. Jerome Rivera, he's an American. He's 25 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall with a 72.5-inch reach. He's making his UFC debut after defeating Luis Rodriguez on Dana White's Contender Series on August 4th. He has 7 wins by submission and 3 wins by decision. Both of his losses come to UFC veterans. He was submitted by Robert Sanchez in one fight, and then he also lost a fight due to an injury to UFC fighter Brandon Royval. Jerome is still new to the UFC, and Tyson Nam has been fighting top competition for a long time now. This is a big step up for Jerome, and I don't think he'll be able to catch Nam in a submission. In 31 fights, Nam has never been submitted. And the only thing that Nam has to do is land one big punch. He's proven time and time again that he has the power to knock somebody out with just one hit. However, Jerome has never been knocked out, and I don't think that he's going to get knocked out in this fight. I think on the feet, Nam will actually outstrike him and end up winning a decision. Now we move on to the next fight. This is Darrick Minner versus TJ Laramie at 145 pounds. Darrick Minner is an American with a record of 24 wins and 11 losses. He's 30 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, with a 71-inch reach. Minner's 0-1 in the UFC, losing his UFC debut to Grant Dawson by submission in round 2. Minner also competed on Dana White's Contender Series where he fought Herbert Burns, and he lost by submission in the first round from a triangle choke. He's the former 2-time DCS 145-pound champion. Darrick Minner has 21 submissions on his record, 19 of them come in the first round. He has 2 decision wins and 1 knockout win as well. While Minner is known for his submission game, most of his losses come by submission as well. He has 8 losses by submission. He also has 2 losses by knockout, and he's lost by decision 1 time. TJ Laramie, he's a 22-year-old Canadian. He's 12-3 in MMA. 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 66-inch reach. Laramie is making his UFC debut after competing on Dana White's Contender Series, where he fought a Washington native, Daniel Swain, and Swain injured his rib in the first round, probably from the fact that TJ Laramie took him down and was able to control him with hip control and ground and pound him throughout the first round. In between rounds, Swain was not able to continue. He was having a hard time breathing from that rib injury. Ultimately, the doctor stopped that fight. Laramie is also the former PFC 145-pound champion and the former TKO MMA 145-pound champion as well. He has 7 wins by knockout, 3 wins by decision, and 2 wins by submission. 2 of his 3 losses come from knockout in the first round, and then 1 of them comes from a split decision. Minner will pose his biggest threat in the first round. He comes out hard and strong looking for a submission. He looks to grab a hold of you and tie you up, and he's got a vice grip-like grip that when he gets a hold of you, he just grabs and squeezes. So in this fight, the first round is where Minner is going to have his most success. If Laramie can make it past the first round, I think that he'll win this fight. If Minner can't lock in that submission, he seems to have trouble on the ground. Like I said, he has 8 losses by submission. On Dana White's Contender Series, Laramie came out there, took down Daniel Swain, and he held him down and ground and pounded him throughout most of the fight. I don't think that Minner will be able to catch him in a submission. I think that Laramie's probably a little bit too good for that. But I do think that this fight is going to the ground for sure. I think that TJ Laramie is going to take him down, avoid the submissions, and he's going to finish him off with ground and pound in round 2. So my prediction is TJ Laramie by TKO round 2. And for our next fight, we have Andre Ewell versus Irwin Rivera at 135 pounds. Andre, Mr. Highlight Ewell, is an American with 16 wins and 6 losses on his record. He's 32 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall with a 75-inch reach. He's 3-2 in the UFC, coming off of a split decision win over John Rivera. Andre also defeated former UFC champion Renan Barão in his UFC debut by split decision. However, he has never had back-to-back wins inside of the UFC, and he will look to do that in this fight. He's the former CES 135-pound champion, and he is also the former Gladiator Challenge 135-pound and 145-pound champion as well. He has 7 wins by knockout, 5 wins by decision, and 4 wins by submission. However, he has been submitted 3 times, he's lost by decision 2 times, and he has been knocked out as well 1 time. Now he fights the fighter coming out of Mexico. This is Irwin the Beast Rivera. Irwin is 10-5 in MMA. He's 31 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 68-inch reach. He's 1-1 in the UFC, coming off of a split decision win over Ali Al-Qaisi. Irwin came in on 24 hours notice, bumped up a weight class, and fought Giga Chikadze in his UFC debut. He did lose that fight by decision. He's the former Titan FC 135-pound champion with 5 wins by knockout, 4 wins by decision, and 1 submission win on his record. 3 of his losses have come by decision, and then the other one comes from a broken foot. I think that this fight will most likely be a stand-up fight. However, Irwin Rivera did have several good takedowns against Ali Al-Qaisi, and I do think that he'll have the advantage in the takedown department. Because I think he'll have the advantage in the takedown department, I believe that Irwin Rivera will win by decision. Now we move on to the next fight of the night. I'm actually super excited about this fight right here. I have a little bit of a personal interest in this one. This fight is Randy Costa versus Journey Newson at 135 pounds. First, we'll talk about Randy the Zohan Costa. He is an American and he's 5-1 in MMA. He's 26 years old, 5 feet 9 inches tall with a 73-inch reach. Randy is 1-1 in the UFC, coming off of a first-round knockout over Boston Salmon. However, he did lose to Brandon Davis by submission in his UFC debut. All 5 of Randy's wins come by a first-round knockout. His only loss is that second-round submission that I told you about against Brandon Davis. I think that Randy Costa is a bit of a can crusher. All of his wins, except for one, come over guys who do not have a winning record. And the one win that he does have over a guy with a winning record is against Boston Salmon. But Boston Salmon came off of a 641-day layoff in his UFC debut, and he lost that fight. So I don't really think that that's necessarily a great win, beating a guy that's 0-1 after coming off of a 641-day layoff. Now he'll be fighting Journey Newson, who lives across the river from me. He lives in Portland, Oregon. I'm in Vancouver, Washington. We're separated by the Columbia River. Journey is an American. He's 9-2 as a professional, and he also had 7 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw as an amateur. As an amateur, he actually fought UFC fighter Ricky Simone for a 135-pound title at the FCFF, the place where I made my MMA debut. It's owned by Chael Sonnen and his partner, Kevin Keeney. When Journey fought Ricky as an amateur, he actually lost that fight by a decision. Journey also fought another fighter for a title belt for the FAMA 135-pound title. He fought against a guy that I was coaching, the guy that I was coaching. His name is Anthony Marks. Journey won that fight by a decision. However, Journey missed weight by about 8 pounds. We got a call saying that he wasn't going to take the fight, that he was going to back out. He didn't want to fight. And we ended up making shirts that said, "Don't be scared, homie." And we all wore those shirts to the fight. When Anthony and Journey fought, it was a good fight. Journey ended up basically holding on and hugging the legs of Anthony because Anthony was outstriking him a little bit. Journey won the decision. He hit Anthony with a couple of good strikes, but mostly just controlled him on the ground. So while you've seen Journey mostly use his hands in the UFC, he does have a solid ground game and a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So Journey has 1 loss and 1 no contest in the UFC. He actually won his last fight, knocking his opponent out in about 38 seconds, but later tested positive for marijuana, and that fight was changed to a no contest. He lost his UFC debut to Ricardo Ramos by unanimous decision. He was a short notice replacement, and he did well considering the fact that he took that fight on very short notice, and he was fighting a very tough guy in Ricardo Ramos. So even though Journey has that knockout in the UFC, he's still actually looking for his first official UFC win, and he looks to do that in this fight. Journey's the former Prime FC 135-pound champion. Like I said, he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has 3 wins by submission, 3 wins by knockout, and 3 wins by decision. In his 2 losses, he has 1 loss by decision, and that goes to Ricardo Ramos, and his other loss is to current UFC fighter Benito Lopez by first-round knockout. I think Randy Costa is going to try to come out fast and strong and put Journey away real fast, just like he's done in his other 5 wins. However, Journey has a really good chin, and I give Journey the wrestling advantage in this fight. I don't think that we're really going to see much of the wrestling from Journey in this fight. I think that when Randy Costa pressures forward to try to hit him, Journey's too powerful and he's pretty accurate with his strikes. I think that he's going to land that overhand right that he's landed a couple times before and put him away. My prediction is Journey Newson by knockout in round 1. Now we move on to the next fight. This is Sarah Alpar versus Jessica Rose Clark at 135 pounds. First, we'll talk about Too Sweet Sarah Alpar. Sarah is an American and she's 9-4 in MMA. She's 29 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall with a 63-inch reach. This will be her UFC debut. She made her way into the UFC fighting on Dana White's Contender Series, where she was able to defeat her opponent, Shannon Young, by rear naked choke in round 2. She's the former 135-pound LFA champion, and she is also the former Sugar Creek Showdown 125-pound and 135-pound champion as well. On top of that, she's the former Extreme Fight Night League 125-pound champion too. College wrestler wrestling out of Oklahoma City University. She has 5 wins by decision, 2 wins by knockout, and 2 wins by submission. In her 5 losses, 3 have come by way of decision, and then 2 have come by submission. Now she fights Jessica Rose Clark. Jessica Rose Clark is an Australian. She has 9 wins, 6 losses, and 1 no contest on her record as a pro. She also went 5-1 as an amateur before making her pro debut. Jessica is 32 years old, 5 feet 5 inches tall with a 76-inch reach. She's 2-2 in the UFC, but she's coming off of a 2-fight losing streak, losing to Pani Kianzad and Jessica I, both by decision. In the UFC, she beat Paige Van Zandt by decision, and she also beat Beck Rawlings by split decision. She's the former Rochambeau Women's 135-pound champion and the former XFC Women's 135-pound champion. Jessica is currently a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She has 5 wins by decision, 2 wins by knockout, and 2 wins by submission, and all 6 of her losses have come by decision. In this fight, I believe Jessica Rose Clark will have the striking advantage and Sarah Alpar will have the wrestling advantage. I think that if Jessica can keep this fight standing, she will win this fight. Sarah Alpar didn't exactly show the best striking on Dana White's Contender Series. The real question is, will Jessica Rose Clark be able to stop the takedown of Sarah Alpar? Jessica Rose Clark has stopped about 52% of the takedown attempts against her in the UFC, but I'm not so sure she'll be able to do that against Sarah Alpar, who is a college-level wrestler. Ultimately, I think that Jessica Rose Clark moves too well. I don't think that Sarah Alpar will be able to close the distance and take her down like she wants to do. And I think that Jessica Rose Clark is going to pick apart Sarah Alpar on the feet. I'm not sure that it's going to be a knockout because Jessica Rose Clark hasn't exactly showed the knockout power, although I do think that she has pretty good striking. I pick Jessica Rose Clark to win this fight by decision. All right, so we move on to the next fight of the night. This one's Jordan Espinosa versus David Dvorak at 125 pounds. Jordan Espinosa is currently ranked 13th in the UFC flyweight division. He's an American with 15 wins, 7 losses, and 1 no contest on his record. In that no contest fight, Espinosa was struck with an illegal strike to the back of the head. It ended the fight. The fight was deemed a no contest because of the illegal strike. Espinosa also went 5-1 as an amateur before making his pro debut. Now he's 30 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a 69-inch reach. He's 2-2 in the UFC, coming off of a decision win over Mark De La Rosa in his last fight. However, he did lose to Matt Schnell and Alex Perez in the first round by submission. One was an arm triangle and the other was a regular triangle choke. In his UFC debut, he defeated Eric Shelton by decision. Espinosa made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he knocked his opponent out in the 3rd round. Espinosa is also the former TSE 135-pound champion. He has 7 wins by submission, 6 wins by decision, and 2 wins by knockout. He has, however, been submitted 4 times and lost by a decision 3 times. Now, he fights David the Undertaker Dvorak. David is currently ranked 14th in the UFC, and he's fighting out of the Czech Republic. He's 18-3 in MMA, and he's only 28 years old. David is 5 feet 5 inches tall with a 68-inch reach, and currently he's on a 14-fight win streak. He is only 1-0 in the UFC, coming off of a decision win over Bruno Silva in March of this year. He's the former GCF 125-pound champion. He has 8 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission, and 3 wins by decision. This guy is a finisher. He has lost at least 1 time by knockout and decision. I'm not really a big fan of Jordan Espinosa. I didn't think that he looked that great against Mark De La Rosa, who I also don't think is really that great. But what I really did like was the striking of David Dvorak in his UFC debut. Dvorak showed great striking in that fight, and I believe he'll have the advantage on the feet in this fight. Espinosa's never been knocked out, and I don't think that this will happen in this fight. So in this fight, I predict that David Dvorak will win this fight by decision. Now we move on to the next fight. This one is Mayra Bueno Silva versus Romero Borella at 125 pounds. Shitara Mayra Bueno Silva, she is a Brazilian, 6-1 overall in MMA. She's 29 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 66.5-inch reach. She's 1-1 in the UFC, coming off of a decision loss to a very tough Marina Moros. Mayra did defeat Jillian Roberts with the 1st-round submission in her UFC debut. Mayra did compete on Dana White's Contender Series, where she defeated her opponent Mayana Souza with a wicked ninja choke in round 1. She's the former Batalla MMA 135-pound women's champion. She has 4 wins by submission, 1 win by knockout, and 1 win by decision on her record. Her only loss is that decision loss to Marina Moros that I just told you about. Now she'll be fighting Maravilla Romero Borella. Mayra is an Italian. She's 12-8 in MMA, 34 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 69-inch reach. Mayra has struggled so far in the UFC. She's 1-4 in the UFC right now. She's coming off of a 1st-round submission loss to a very tough Courtney Casey, and her only win in the UFC is a split decision win over Talia Santos. Mayra has 3 different black belts. She's a black belt in judo, a black belt in kickboxing, and a black belt in shudo fighting. And she also currently has a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mayra is also the former Combat League 135-pound women's champion. Interesting to note is that Mayra is actually under a 26-year suspension from the National Anti-Doping Agency of Italy for her involvement in trafficking and distribution of cocaine and marijuana. She was suspended initially for 15 years, and then she received an additional 11-year sentence when they found out that she was actually training inside of a combat sports facility, which apparently in Italy you're not supposed to do if you are under suspension. The reason that she was able to join the UFC is because USADA doesn't actually recognize the crimes that she committed in Italy as a violation of the UFC anti-doping policy. So the UFC was able to bring her in even though she is under suspension in Italy. Now, Mayra has 5 wins by decision, 4 wins by submission, and 3 wins by knockout on her record. In her 8 losses, she's been knocked out 4 times, she's lost from submission 2 times, and she's lost from decision 2 times. When Bueno Silva was lost to Marina Moros, she was put on her back. She didn't really seem to know what she was doing there. She didn't really seem to have an answer. She had an open guard for a little while. She closed her guard, but never once did she attempt a submission, and never once did she attempt to get out of there. So I have a feeling that her ground game is really lacking here. And I think that Mayra is going to work to push this fight to the ground. While Mayra has good striking, she also likes to take these fights to the ground sometimes. And I think that that will happen in this fight. I think that this is the best place for Mayra to fight in this fight. I think it's the safest place. But ultimately, what I think will happen is I think that Mayra will take down Bueno Silva. And Bueno Silva is really going to struggle not knowing what to do on the ground there. And Mayra Romero Borella is going to submit her in the 2nd round. All right, so now we move on to an exciting fight. This one is Kevin Holland versus Darren Stewart at 185 pounds. Kevin Holland is an American. He's 17-5 in MMA. He's 27 years old, 6 feet 3 inches tall, and 4-2 inside of the UFC. He made his way to the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he fought Will Santiago and he won by a decision. Kevin Holland is currently on a 2-fight win streak. He knocked out his last opponent, Joaquin Buckley, in the 3rd round. He also has a first-round TKO finish over a tough Anthony Hernandez from a knee to the body. Holland is a 2nd-degree black belt in Kung Fu. Not sure how much that really helps him out here, but he also has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Overall, Kevin Holland has 9 knockouts, 6 wins by submission, and 3 wins by decision on his record. He's the former XKO 185-pound champion with 3 losses by decision and 2 losses by submission. Now he fights the fighter out of England. This is Darren Stewart. Darren Stewart is 17-5 overall in MMA. Darren Stewart is 29 years old, 12-5 in MMA, and he's 6 feet tall. He's coming off of a first-round submission win over Dana White Contender Series veteran Maki Pitolo. Stewart is a black belt in Taekwondo, and he has a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's the former Killa Cam 205-pound champion with 7 knockouts on his record, 4 decisions, and 1 submission win on his record as well. Darren has lost by submission 2 times, he's lost by decision 2 times, and he's lost by the split decision 1 time. I think this fight is huge for both guys. I think both guys are on the verge of breaking into the top 15 at 185 pounds. I think overall this fight's going to be a striking fight with the threat of going to the ground. I know both guys have a little bit of jiu-jitsu experience, and the possibility of hitting the ground is pretty good in this fight. But I do mostly see this fight as a stand-up, slug-out fight. If the fight does hit the ground, I think that Holland has the advantage there. I don't think it's enough for him to submit Stewart. I think the fight goes back up to the feet, doesn't spend a lot of time on the ground. And overall, I believe that Kevin Holland will win this fight by decision. All right, now we move on to the next fight. This is Mackenzie Dern versus Randa Markos at 115 pounds. Mackenzie Dern is an American. She's 8-1 overall in MMA. She's 27 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall with a 63-inch reach. Mackenzie is on a 1-fight win streak. She's 3-1 overall in the UFC. She's coming off of a first-round knee bar submission over Hannah Cyphers in her last fight. She also defeated Amanda Cooper by a first-round submission, and she defeated Ashley Yoder by split decision in her UFC debut. Mackenzie Dern is likely the most decorated female jiu-jitsu practitioner that we have. She has 31 world medals in jiu-jitsu, in no-gi and gi jiu-jitsu. 22 of those are gold, 5 of those are bronze, and 4 of those are silver medals. However, Mackenzie Dern has had issues with making weight. She's missed weight 3 times in her professional career. The last time she missed weight was in 2018, and she's fought 2 times since then, and she made weight for both of those fights, so hopefully that won't be an issue here. Mackenzie Dern is a submission artist. She's got 5 wins by submission, and she has 3 wins by decision. Her only loss is a decision loss to Amanda Ribas. Now she fights Randa, the Quiet Storm Markos. Randa Markos has been around for a while. She's currently the number 15 ranked UFC women's flyweight fighter. She's from Iraq but fighting out of Canada. She has 10 wins, 8 losses, and 1 draw on her record. She's 35 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall with a 63.5-inch reach. Randa made her way into the UFC through The Ultimate Fighter, where she defeated Tisha Torres by decision and Felice Herrig by armbar before losing to Rose Namajunas by a Kimura. Randa is currently 6-7 in the UFC with 1 draw on her record to Marina Rodriguez. She's coming off of a decision loss to Amanda Ribas, but she's never put together back-to-back wins or losses inside of the UFC. So if the pattern continues, we should see Randa Markos win this fight. Inside of the UFC, she has a couple of very good wins. She defeated Angela Hill with an armbar in the first round, and she also defeated the former UFC Women's Champion Carla Esparza by split decision. She's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the PFC's former Women's Strawweight Champion. Overall, she has 6 wins by decision and 4 wins by submission, and she's lost 7 times by decision and 1 time by submission. So in order to compare these 2 fighters, I'm going to talk a little bit about Amanda Ribas. Randa Markos and Mackenzie Dern both have losses to Amanda Ribas. Markos is a very tough fighter, but she was shut down by Amanda Ribas pretty much everywhere. Ribas had the striking advantage, and once she got to the ground, she also had the ground advantage there. Markos was not able to stop Ribas from taking her to the ground, and then Markos also initiated a couple takedowns on her own, but whenever she did that, Ribas was able to capitalize on those positions and take advantage of those takedowns. But Amanda Ribas is very tough. She was also able to shut down Mackenzie Dern. In their fight, Mackenzie Dern attempted 6 takedowns and was successful in none of those. However, Amanda Ribas had 2 takedown attempts, and she was successful in both of those, and Mackenzie Dern was not able to submit her while she was on the ground there. In this fight, I think Randa Markos needs to keep the fight on her feet. If she doesn't keep it on the feet, she can be in a little bit of trouble, but she has about a 52% success rate in stopping takedowns inside of the UFC, so she may be able to stop Mackenzie Dern from taking her down. It is a little concerning to me that Markos was submitted by Courtney Casey, given the fact that I believe that Mackenzie Dern is far better than Courtney Casey in the submission area. I think if the fight sticks on the ground, Randa Markos will likely get submitted. But overall, 4 of the 5 submissions that Mackenzie Dern has on her MMA record have all came in the first round. And I believe that if Randa Markos can make it past the first round, she'll be able to win this fight. So my prediction is Randa Markos by decision. Now we move on to a very fun and a very exciting fight in Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann at 205 pounds. Johnny Walker comes to us from Brazil. He's 17-5 in MMA. He's 28 years old, 6 feet 6 inches tall with a crazy 82-inch reach. He made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he defeated Luis Henrique de Silva by decision. After that, he knocked out his next 3 opponents in Misha Serkinov, Justin Ledet, and Khalil Roundtree, all in the first round, and he won a Performance of the Night bonus in each of those fights. He did lose to Corey Anderson by a first-round knockout, and he did lose to Nikita Krylov by decision as well. He's the former UCMMA light heavyweight champion and the former EBD light heavyweight champion as well. While Johnny Walker is mostly a stand-up striker, he does have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. Overall, Johnny Walker has 14 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, and 1 win by decision. He has been knocked out 3 times, he's lost by submission 1 time, and he has lost by decision 1 time as well. Now we move on to Ryan Superman Spann. Ryan Spann is an American. He's 18-5 in MMA. He's 29 years old, 6 feet 5 inches tall with an 81.5-inch reach. Still a really long reach, but Johnny Walker will have a half-inch advantage in that department there. Ryan Spann is currently on an 8-fight win streak, going 4-0 in the UFC since Dana White's Contender Series. Most recently, he defeated Sam Alvey by split decision back in May of this year. He defeated Devin Clark in round 1 with the guillotine choke. He also knocked out the legend Antonio Nogueira in the first round. Now, like I said, Ryan Spann made his way into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, where he defeated Emiliano Sordi by submission in round 1. He's the former LFA light heavyweight champion and the former Hero FC 185-pound champion as well. Spann has 11 wins by submission, 4 wins by knockout, and 3 wins by decision. However, Spann has been knocked out 2 times, he's lost by a decision 2 times, and he has been submitted 1 time as well. I think overall, Johnny Walker is the more technical striker in this fight. I expect Spann to try to walk him down, much like he did to Sam Alvey. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. It will set up the striking for Johnny Walker. I think Spann's going to look to take down Walker to the ground, but I don't know if that's the best idea given the fact that Johnny Walker has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but that's going to be Spann's best spot for victory, I believe. In all 5 of Johnny Walker's fights in the UFC, he's never been taken down. I don't see that happening here. I think that Ryan Spann is going to walk forward and he's going to come to Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker will be able to connect and catch him with a punch and knock him out in round 1. All right, so now we move on to what is potentially the most anticipated fight on this fight card. This is Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald Mirsad at 185 pounds. Now, this is interesting because Khamzat Chimaev, he's competing at 170 pounds and 185 pounds. If you look at his UFC debut, he competed at 185 pounds, and then just 10 days later, he competed at 170 pounds. So Hamzat's competing in this fight against Gerald Mirsad at 185 pounds, and then he has a second fight scheduled here in about a month with Damian Maia at 170 pounds. This isn't the first time we've seen this from him. Like I just said, in his UFC debut, he was 185. Then he fought Rhys McGee at 170 after that. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat was born in Chechnya, Russia, but now he lives in Sweden. He's representing Sweden in this fight. He's 8-0 in MMA, 26 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, and 2-0 inside of the UFC, finishing both fights inside of the first round. So Khamzat defeated John Phillips in the first round by submission with a Darce choke, and then he fought Rhys McGee 10 days later at 170 pounds, and he defeated him in the first round with a ground and pound. Now, up until this point, when we're talking about Khamzat Chimaev, he doesn't seem to have been tested. But we need to be a little bit honest with ourselves. Neither John Phillips or Rhys McGee is a grappler. So him taking them down and defeating them in the first round, yes, it's impressive. Yes, it's impressive that he set the record. But I think that we still have more questions to ask about Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat's great. I'm a big fan of his. I like what I see from him, but it's still too early and we still have more to see from him, which is why this fight is so good. Now, Khamzat has 4 wins by submission and 4 wins by knockout. He has never been defeated before, and he did just receive his blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu this August. Khamzat has good striking and good takedowns. He does a good job of mixing them up together. We haven't seen a lot from his striking yet, though. Now he goes against Gerald the Machine Mirsad. Gerald Mirsad, he's an American, 31-13 in MMA. He's 32 years old, 6 feet 1 inches tall, and 6-5 inside of the UFC. He is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, coming off of a loss to Ian Heinisch. He's a Taekwondo-style fighter with a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a black belt in kickboxing as well. Now, I don't really see that black belt in kickboxing come out much. Usually it's going to the ground pretty fast for him, and we see that ground game, or he's pressuring in, trying to set up and take it down to the ground. And when he does strike, honestly, I don't really see much of a kickboxing background there, but supposedly he has a black belt there. Gerald Mirsad is also the former RFA 185-pound champion. Now, with this fight here, what makes this so interesting is the fact that Gerald Mirsad has 23 submission wins on his record. He does have 6 wins by knockout and 2 wins by decision, but what I really want to focus on is the 23 wins by submission. What's important to note about that is that he does have 8 losses by submission as well and 3 losses by decision. So this fight right here really gives us the opportunity to gauge the level of Khamzat Chimaev's grappling. So we've seen him come out and be dominant, but they weren't against grapplers. We get to see him against a guy who has good grappling, who has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt versus a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt right here. On paper, Mirsad should be miles and miles ahead of Khamzat Chimaev. So this is a great test to see where he's really at. One of the things that I think you guys are going to see in this fight, and you might be a little bit surprised to see it, is I think that Gerald Mirsad is going to force Khamzat Chimaev to have to use some of his striking. Now, we haven't seen it much inside of the UFC, but Khamzat has pretty good striking that he can mix in there to set up his takedowns and stuff, and I expect to see him use those strikes a little bit more. I don't think he's going to come in right away and take down Mirsad like he has in the past with these last couple of fighters. I don't think he's going to take him down right away and grind him out and land a bunch of ground and pound right away. I think it is going to happen over a course of time. I think in round 2, after we've had a little bit of battling going on in round 1, where I think Khamzat will win that first round. I don't think that he's going to be overly dominant, getting a 10-8 round or anything like that. I think Khamzat's going to win that round. We're going to go into round 2. He's going to take down Mirsad again after a little bit of back and forth. I think that Khamzat will actually have the striking advantage in this fight, and he's going to use that to set up those takedowns to get it down to the ground. What he has to be worried about is the fact that Mirsad can attack a submission at any point. He has 23 on his record, you guys. 23 submissions there. If Khamzat gets past that, that's a good gauge of where he's at. Because Mirsad, while he has 23 submission wins, he has 8 submission losses. This is a good gauge. Is he somewhere in the middle? Is he up here? Or is he actually down here? If he gets dominated by Mirsad in the grappling game, Khamzat, the hype train goes out the window. It's a must-win for Khamzat right here, and it's a really big opportunity for Gerald Mirsad to boost his name up a little bit. But overall, in this fight, I think that Khamzat Chimaev will win by TKO in round 2 from ground and pound. Alright, so now we move on to the co-main event of the night. This is Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Nico Price. I hate to say it, but I don't really get excited about watching Cowboy Cerrone fight anymore. Yes, he's fun. Yes, he's exciting and he's explosive. But you have to understand something. Cowboy Cerrone has only won 4 of his last 12 fights. And he's been knocked out in 6 of those last 12 fights as well. I'm not a guy that wants to see fighters have a bunch of CTE and a bunch of other brain problems like that. I don't want to see guys going out there and turning into a potential BJ Penn. So for me, this fight is not exciting. I'm not super happy about this one. I really wish that we could see Cowboy just walk away. Yeah, he looked good in his last fight against Anthony Pettis, but Anthony Pettis still beat him, and Anthony Pettis is kind of on a little bit of a decline too. So let's jump into Donald Cowboy Cerrone a little bit. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, even with only winning 4 of his last 12 fights, is somehow ranked 14th in the welterweight division. He's an American with 36 wins and 15 losses on his record. He's 37 years old, 6 feet 1 inches tall with a 73-inch reach. Cowboy Cerrone is a former professional Muay Thai fighter. Interestingly enough, part of his shorts he likes to keep from his Muay Thai fighting days, he likes to wear in all of his fights. Prior to the Reebok deal, you would see Cowboy incorporate part of his Muay Thai shorts into his MMA shorts somehow. And since then, since the Reebok deal, he hasn't really been able to do that. But if you see his undershorts, you'll see parts of that Muay Thai shorts sticking through. He's got that on the undershorts there, so he does have them with him still. A little weird tradition that he's had going on for his entire MMA career. So Donald Cerrone made his way into the UFC from the WEC merger, where he was at from 2007 until that merger. He made his UFC debut back in 2011 at UFC 126, and he's been here ever since. In his UFC debut, he defeated Paul Kelly by submission in round 2. What I find interesting about this is if you look on ESPN.com, if you look at the fighter profiles, they have Donald Cerrone listed as a submission fighter. Donald Cerrone does have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he considers himself a Muay Thai style fighter with Jiu-Jitsu. Given the fact that Donald Cerrone has been with the UFC since 2011, Donald Cerrone has had a lot of fights. He holds the UFC record for the most wins inside of the octagon, and that is 23 wins there. Donald Cerrone has a total of 35 fights in the UFC, where he went 23-12 overall. He is currently on a 4-fight losing streak, most recently losing to Anthony Pettis by decision. The other 3 fights before that, though, were all knockouts. He has some really impressive wins to his MMA record right now. He has a win over former UFC champion Eddie Alvarez and former UFC champion Benson Henderson. He also has a win over Ali Quinta and Platinum Mike Perry. I just explained to you that Donald Cerrone considers himself more of a Muay Thai style fighter with Jiu-Jitsu. What's interesting is that Donald Cerrone actually has 17 wins by submission, and he only has 10 knockouts on his record and 9 decision wins on his record. He has been knocked out 7 times in his career. Most of those have been in the later end here. That's what concerns me. I have a problem with that. But he has lost 7 times by decision, and he's only been submitted once ever in 40-plus fights. Now he goes against Nico the Hybrid Price. Nico Price is an American. He's 14-4 in MMA with 1 no contest on his record. He's 30 years old, 6 feet tall with a 76-inch reach. Nico has 6 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest on his UFC record. Most recently, he's coming off of a loss due to an injury to Vicente Luque, but he does have 3 first-round knockouts in the UFC. Nico's been working on his jiu-jitsu. He has a brown belt in jiu-jitsu right now, but he's definitely more of a striker with 10 wins by knockout and only 3 wins by submission right now. He does have 1 win by decision as well. Nico's been knocked out 3 times in his MMA career, and he's lost by submission 1 time. He has never lost a decision in MMA. Like I said, I love watching Donald Cerrone fight. I just don't want to see him suffer the fate of a guy like Jens Pulver, like BJ Penn, like so many others who continue to fight way past the time that they should be fighting. I don't want people to look at him like they look at Crazy Horse now or Felony. The interesting thing, though, is that Nico Price has also lost 4 of his last 8 fights. Nico Price has lost 4 of his last 8, and 3 of them were by knockout as well. So if there is a fighter that Donald Cerrone should fight, This is the fight for him right now. This fight makes sense. If there's a chance for him to come back and get a win against a good name, this is it. This is the fight that needs to happen. Niko Price is a wild striker. He throws himself out there and he lunges forward. He puts himself at risk a little bit when he throws some strikes. He throws some weird kicks that are hard to see coming. But for a kickboxer like Donald Cerrone, I think he should be able to see those kicks. I think Donald Cerrone is a little bit crisper and a little bit faster. And I'm actually going to pick him to win in this fight, even though I'm not excited to watch him fight. I think Donald Cerrone knocks out Niko Price in round 1. So now we move on to the main event. This is Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. Me as a wrestler, I'm very excited about this fight. We have two D1 wrestlers going against each other. We have a former interim welterweight champion going against a former welterweight world champion. This should be awesome here. First, we'll talk about Colby Covington, the number 2 ranked contender at 170 pounds right now. Colby Chaos Covington is the former interim welterweight champion. He's an American, 15-2 in MMA, 32 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall with a 72-inch reach. He's 10-2 in the UFC, coming off of a 5th-round knockout loss to the champion Kamaru Usman. Now, what's interesting about that fight is if you look at the judges' scorecard, that fight was essentially dead even going into the 5th round. One judge had the fight 3 rounds to 1 for Colby. The other had the fight 3 rounds to 1 for Usman. And then the third judge had the fight 2-2 for each of those guys. So that fight was essentially a draw at that point going into that 5th round. And that 5th round would have decided the winner of that fight, most likely. And Usman was able to come in and knock Colby Covington out with a good punch. I know Colby protested it. A lot of people protested it. I was pulling for Colby Covington, but I think it was a good stoppage. As you've heard me say before, I'm in favor of an earlier stoppage than a later stoppage every single time. 100% of the time. I'm about protecting the fighters, make sure that they're safe. Inside of the UFC, he also defeated Rafael dos Santos by decision. And in the UFC, he set the record for the most strikes landed in a fight. When facing Robbie Lawler, he landed 541 strikes total. Now, he's a D1 wrestler who wrestled out of Oregon State University, and he has the best jab in all of MMA. In 2013, Colby Covington won the FILA No-Gi Grappling World Championship. Colby has 8 wins by decision, 5 wins by knockout, and 2 wins by submission. Both of his losses come inside of the UFC. One was a submission loss to Warlley Alves early in his MMA career, and the other was that one to Kamaru Usman in a title fight. He goes against the chosen one, Tyron Woodley, the sleepy one, the one that likes to sit back and wait and not do anything. He's the former UFC 170-pound champion, and he successfully defended that belt 4 times before losing it to Kamaru Usman by decision. He's ranked 5th in the UFC. You would think that being a former UFC champion, he might be a little bit higher, but he lost to Kamaru Usman, and he lost to number 1 contender Gilbert Burns. Tyron Woodley is an American. He has 19 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw to his record. And that draw was the title fight against Stephen Thompson. He fought Stephen Thompson in a rematch and actually beat him in that match. He's 38 years old, 5 feet 9 inches tall, and he has a 74-inch reach. He's 9-4 overall inside of the UFC, most recently coming off of that loss to Gilbert Burns in a number 1 contenders fight. All 4 of his losses in the UFC have been a decision of some sort. 3 of them were unanimous decision, and 1 of them was a split decision. He defeated the former champion Robbie Lawler by knockout, and he also defeated Stephen Thompson, who he went to a draw with at one point. He defeated him by decision. He has a split decision win over Kelvin Gastelum and a decision win over Damian Maia. He also submitted Darren Till with a Darce choke in round 2. Tyron Woodley was teammates with Ben Askren at the D1 level, wrestling at the University of Missouri. Woodley also has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He has 7 wins by decision, 7 wins by knockout, and 5 wins by submission. 4 of his 5 losses have come by decision, and he has only been knocked out 1 time in his career. Now, for this fight, I was talking with some people. There seems to be some people who are not excited about this fight because of the way that Tyron Woodley fights. They say he just sits back and he's not doing anything. Well, that's been the pattern of Tyron Woodley for years. That's been the pattern of Tyron Woodley for years. It's entirely dependent on his dance partner. Who is that person standing across from him? Now, if he has someone who's going to push the pace in that fight, the fight will be exciting. Tyron Woodley is not going to push the pace. He hasn't pushed the pace in a long time. With this fight, though, I definitely think that the pace is going to be pushed. Colby Covington is a high-volume striker. Like I said, 541 strikes in 1 fight alone. Colby Covington is going to be in his face, forcing Tyron Woodley to fight. That's going to make this an exciting fight. That has me super excited about this fight. One of the lowest volumes versus one of the highest volumes. Either Woodley steps up and fights, or he suffers the same fate that he suffered against Burns and Usman in the last couple of fights, and potentially getting actually knocked out because of the volume from Covington. Now, Covington's not necessarily known to be a big knockout puncher, more of a volume puncher, but Woodley doesn't do a lot. And if he doesn't do a lot, he's going to get hit a lot. And punches and bunches can wear you down and lead to a TKO. But in this fight, I don't think that that's going to happen. This is going to be interesting because I'm not sure what we're going to see as far as the grappling goes. On paper, the grappling should probably be an advantage from Tyron Woodley, but Covington has done a really good job inside of the UFC utilizing his striking with his grappling, so it'll be interesting to see where this goes. If Woodley wins this fight, it puts him back in position to maybe get another title shot. He might have to fight for one more. He might have to fight one more fight to get a title shot. But I think that if Covington wins this fight, and if he wins it in dominant fashion, he places himself back in position for another shot at Kamaru Usman. This fight is a huge fight with huge title shot implications on it, and I'm super excited to see it. But overall, what I think is going to happen is I think that Colby Covington is going to use his volume. He's going to be too much, popping that jab out there. Like I said, he has the best jab in all of MMA. There's not another fighter who throws a jab out there like him. There's not another fighter out there that has the volume as him. And I think that that's going to lead to a unanimous decision for Colby Covington. Hey, so that's my picks for UFC Fight Night Vegas 11. I'm super excited for you guys. My brother will be back, Cullen. He'll be back with us during the live show that we'll be coming to you with on Saturday. Make sure that you tune in for that. We'll be announcing all of our updates. If you're not with us on Tapology, sign up right now. Join us on Tapology. Go to tapology.com/groups434. Put your picks in and compete with us. Throughout our live podcast, we like to announce the standings, where everybody's at throughout the fights. And if you win, you'll be announced at the end of the night as our winner. Also, don't forget to jump over and check out our video about our giveaway that we're doing. We are giving away 2 copies of EA UFC 4. Hop over to the video for the instructions on that, and have a great day, you guys. It's time to crush some cans.